analytical economic elemental researchers and strategists. At Peers, we stand as your all-in-one partner, adept at steering you through the intricate realms of politics, economics, and business. Join us at Peers. We're our seasoned team with expertise in politics, economy, business, and law is committed to your success. Together, we will navigate the future, making informed decisions that lead to lasting impacts. Follow us on Facebook, X, and LinkedIn to stay informed about how we can help you achieve your goals.
Previously on episode 17, it's everyone's right to know and understand, so we can participate. For that, we have to listen to Sona.
Wherein ang pinaka-objective na dito with this 8-point agenda is to reduce poverty at a single digit rate and elevate yung status ng country to upper middle income status. Siguro maganda to, Adrian, doon sa poverty nag-usapan natin kasi later on pag-uusapan natin of course about Mindanao.
Yes.
Mindanao updates sa Mindanao ngayon. So I think this will be a very important take of point pagdating po sa discussion natin. So yun, we'll be talking about the dito siguro maganda dito natin ibase siguro yung ating assessment whether ano ba ang mga progress na nangyayari given that in a few months nasa midterm na tayo ng administrasyon and by next year this will be a siguro kasi national election na by next year. So very important that this will be sort of parang validation.
Yes.
Kung whether itong mga pangako priorities na na-identify administration ito talagang nami-meet pa o hindi. So, isa-isay ko lang siguro just to highlight
Sure.
8-point agenda na yun sinasabi ng Presidente. So I think very basic dito is yung
need to also improve the value chain so that we will not only be producing raw materials but also come to the point that we would also be producing the final products but that can be distributed in the country and the international community. And that translates into pag meron tayong hold on that, then we will improve our purchasing power.
Bago ka makarating doon sa single digit poverty rate na yun, is kailangan, of course, meron bang sapat na resources para ma-push mo yung economy into, sabi nga nila, upper middle income status. But kailangan mag-start muna kasi tayo doon sa budget, sa fiscal capacity ng gobyerno para maiangat yung ating bansa. Yung initial findings shows may positive things naman sa rice tariffication law. Ang sinasabi lang ng mga experts is bigyan pa ng sapat na kunting panahon pa para makita talaga yung positive effect. But so again, from the point of consumers, makikita natin yung positive gain sa kanila in terms of more stable prices of rice. Pagdating naman po sa farmers, producers, one of course, during this time, alam naman natin na mataas pa kasi ang cost ng production ng mga farmers. So, pag tinapat mo sa imported rice yan, sa presyo, pag convert mo to peso per kilo, yung presyo ng imported price compared to domestic price, talagang talo talaga yung local price. Talo ang farmers dyan. So, again, ito yung kailangan siguro na pagtunan pa sila ng gobyerno na how to protect yung ating rice producers. Some sort of subsidies I'm sure meron naman yan. I'm sure DEA sa program to protect local rice producers during the time na hindi sila makakuha
SONA Pier Novel, no? Sana makarating din. That would expect yung support for agriculture. As you have mentioned, medyo maliit lang yung increase compared to all other places because dami-daming pagkain dito, rice as well as all other products, and also the infrastructure, public works as you have mentioned, because if we would improve our transportation logistics, the products, the food that we would be supporting for the whole nation would also come to be affordable. And hopefully, kasi nga natatamaan na rin kami ng bagyo, and then we would also, hindi yan na-contemplate long before because we are typhoon free, pero ngayon, dahil sa climate change, kaya doon lang sa Luzon at sa Visayas kasi palaging natatamaan ng bagyo, but we hope that there would also be a disaster resource center also established in Mindanao as well as on the public safety and security to highlight that Mindanao is safe and secure already.
Good day everyone, magandang araw, maayong adlaw, maupay nga adlaw, maradyaw, nabuntag, mga ka-peers and to everyone listening. Welcome to our special broadcast of Looking Back, Setting Forward, SONA 2024. I am Doc Chin and it's an honor to co-host this event this morning.
And I am Dr. Adrian Tamayo, and we are very happy, we are very thrilled today to be joined by a good congressman, Jude Asidre, to discuss plenty of things that shape our nation, especially that we are expecting things a lot especially tomorrow. Kaya, good morning, magandang umaga po sa ating lahat.
Okay, Congressman Jude, to begin with, let's discuss the current state of gut issues in the Philippines. Reflecting on the past year, can you provide us with an overview of the administration's significant accomplishments and the challenges it faced in 2023?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you, Doc Chin and Doc Adrian, for having me here. Mayong buntag, maupay nga kayo. Thank you for inviting me to share my thoughts. No, I hope it will be something of value to our listeners and those who are watching us this morning. But looking back at the last 2 years, one of the biggest accomplishment for me that this administration has achieved is demonstrating that our country is now back into opening our borders for more investments. I think that's very crucial. No? The president putting us back not only on the diplomatic stage, but even in the stage of international trade. We have heard it from many trade delegations coming in, not only with the president going around, siya yung nagbibisita sa iba't ibang bansa, pero yung mga pumupunta dito, I remember the Secretary of Commerce coming here and saying like, with all the things that's happening in the Philippines, there's only one thing that you're signaling. You're telling the whole world that the Philippines is open for business. And I think that's a critical achievement, given the fact that the whole world is experiencing what we could say with all the remnants of the past COVID crisis. We have all these mga effects from the shifting geopolitical events that's happening all around the world, for the Philippines to appear as that rosy part of international trade, that is something that this administration can be really proud of. The stature that we have rebuilt in 2 years as being an active part of the diplomatic and international trade community. No? But of course, I think the other accomplishment that the administration has accomplished in this past 2 years would be the streamlining of government processes. We've seen Congress pass and the President signing to law the E-Governance Act, which is going to be crucial in ensuring that that government services are made closer to the people by way of digital platforms. Yesterday, President signed into law the new Government Procurement Act, which is a critical part of ensuring operational efficiency in the government bureaucracy. We have seen reforms in the ease of paying taxes. All these efforts put together in ensuring that the people are made not only as clients to the government, but as stakeholders. And we've seen that in the way that Congress, the elected representatives of the people, have really fast-tracked on pushing for the legislative agenda of the President, ranging from the first law ever passed for this Congress, the SIM Registration Act, to the ones that we were able to pass yesterday and enact into law, the new Government Procurement Act and the Anti-Financial Scamming Act. These are indicators that the President wants government to be more transparent, more efficient, more effective. And of course, acknowledging the other challenges that we have is also part of that solution. And knowing that much is to be realized, especially in addressing yung sinasabi nga kanina ni Doc Chin, no, yung mga gut issues, the prices of food, the prices of fuel, and all this, which unfortunately is not just a national problem, but a global one.
Right. Wonderful to hear those things, Congressman Jude, especially many measures that you have mentioned to support our investability and competitiveness, knowing fully well that the President, as you have mentioned, able to present the country as a destination for investments. One thing that also that we should bring to the main discourse is the effort of the administration to facilitate yung faster investment, such as yung green lane for infrastructure development. How do we look at that? It's already signed into law, Congressman June, right? And that is one thing that the international community is looking at para mas mabilis, mas makita, efficient, transparent ang investment processes as well as their application to that.
Well, we've seen the recent administration really look at what are the choke points now of the investment situation in the Philippines. We've seen that one of the key areas that they're looking at, of course, is the ease of doing business. That's critically on top of the mindset of people, and the President has, directed even Congress to make sure that the right measures are put into place. And as I mentioned earlier, the legislation that we have been pushing in the House all point out to that. There cannot be one legislation to cover all, but we're addressing the choke points so that in the process, the executive is able to introduce its own internal reforms. There's also the problem with power, and we're happy that this President really walks the talk, especially in addressing the issue of sustainable power sources and renewables. We've seen an uptick in the investments in renewables over the last 2 years. And clearly that is going to play a significant role in ensuring not only bringing the cost of power down, but effectively also making sure that there is stable source of power. And that's critical for investments. Of course, I think more than anything else, the best criterion or the best ingredient that the President has contributed is really putting up a better image of the Philippines, of the country internationally, and that really has boosted confidence not only among external or foreign investors, but even within the Philippine business community. The level of respectability that the president has achieved for Philippine business, and this is I have to mention this, the level of investment, the level of involvement that private sector has, with the president institutionalizing this practice of involving the private sector advisory council, has really impacted significantly the quality of government service, with businessmen, with the business community, onboard government initiatives to really mainstream all that we're doing and making sure that we're ready for business, or that we're up for business in the Philippines. Well, palagi kong sinasabi, malayo pa ang kailangan natin gawin, pero malayo na ang narating natin.
Correct. And perhaps that is one thing that Doc Chin would also look into, yung recovery efforts. Doc Chin?
Yeah, that's really encouraging to hear, Kong Jude, no? But can you share what are the specific measures that were implemented to boost the economy? Kasi po.
Well, first of all, no, yung the Maharlika Investment Fund is one of the critical pieces of legislation, creating an investment vehicle for the government through the Sovereign Wealth Fund. That's going to be significant. Why? Because we've made the investment gains part already of government looking for additional sources of revenue. We're no longer limiting ourselves to taxation, something that we have heard the president state on a number of times that he's not really in favor of, and also from limiting our borrowings. And for me, that's significant because with a country that is really steeped into, with our population growth, our population profile, all points out that, as a consumption-based economy, things would really, let's just say, we have so much potential with our young population, with the workforce, and that's really going to be attractive. That's one. Second, the E-Governance Act is very critical for ensuring efficiency. We have made significant strides. If I don't know if you've used the eGov app, the application that people now use for well, initially they're using it for getting in and out of the country instead of filling out the written e-pass, e-travel pass, but it can do so much more. You can even have your SSS payments there. You can even have your national ID inputted there. So that for me signals the way to go for digital transactions. We're looking at the Digital Transactions Act. Hopefully, see how the e-commerce act will impact not only the volume of revenues that government will get from digital transactions, but also making sure that there is a sound business environment for digital business or e-business in the country. As I mentioned earlier, the ease of paying taxes is an important measure. I just remember now we also passed into law the one town one product bill. The OTOP law, which hopefully will also help encourage local MSMEs expand and grow into more sustainable and sustained business. And of course, yesterday, of course, the signing into law of the a new Government Procurement Act. The new Government Procurement Act will include the introduction of the most economically advantageous responsive bid as opposed to the lowest calculated responsive bid. Naalala ko noon, nagre-reklamo ang mga opisina bakit hindi tayo makabili ng Apple MacBooks, which in fact, if you really look at it from a cost-benefit analysis, we really can benefit more, no? Given that it's less susceptible to It's more, let's just say, the cybersecurity features are a little bit higher, and also that it's more, if it will, in the long term, it's medyo durable siya, no? But unfortunately, because of the price, we have to settle for other our products, other brands in the market. Now, that this practically resolves it, no, making sure that there is how do you call this? The technical support, the after sales support, and also the competitive advantage of the product, all put together. There's also the provision on the introduction of other modalities for procurement. There are, I think, 11 modalities for procurement that are placed in, making sure that there will be no more delays. The president mentioned from 3 months to 60 days should be the idea for the procurement. And for now, before we only used to have digital platforms for procurement for the bidding process, but now we will have it from end to end. The procurement process will now be hopefully be done electronically. So all of this, with as they always say, procurement is going to be the backbone of government operations. So we look forward with this new law, no, a shift in mindset with government. Hindi na dapat pag gobyerno mabagal o pag gobyerno low standard, di ba? More than institutionalizing changes in the bureaucracy, hopefully the legislation we enacted into law yesterday would signal a shift in mindset in how government works and operates. And I think that's going to be critical in engaging with our investors, especially with foreign investors, but also with the local private sector in the Philippines.
Correct. That's great to hear, the many supports of the administration, and the many successes of the administration legislative in support to the executive. Congressman, very recently, last April, there was the memorandum circular 47 of the Task Force on Zero Hunger, and as mentioned by Doc Chin, it's in relation to the gut issues, the hunger, poverty, access to food, and the Marcos administration aims to achieve zero hunger through a whole of government approach to ensure success on our food security. On the side of the legislation, Congressman, what are measures in relation to food security, access, in relation to that?
Well, it's good that you mentioned the gut issues that we have to confront. Of course, everybody knows with the rising prices of food products, the rising the challenges, especially in the price of rice, no, has really impacted adversely the quality of life among even the food security in our local communities. And I think this is where Congress has also put emphasis on three aspects. First is production. Now Congress is looking at how we can address the gaps in farm and agricultural infrastructure. We just did oversight hearings on the state of our irrigation facilities and infrastructure in the country. The irrigation is going to be crucial because in many countries that harvest, their farm productivity is higher. Like in Vietnam, in Thailand, one of the competitive elements is really the availability of water resources. So that's going to be critical for our agriculture. The other thing that we're working is regulation. We're working on making sure that we have the right safeguards, especially in reference to agricultural smuggling, and making sure that our traders are made accountable in doing unscrupulous practices that really affect on the whole scale the prices of farm products. We've seen that in the case of onions, where to some extent we're looking at the price of the rice as being affected by agriculture smuggling. And the third is creating a favorable how they say this, a certain level of agility on terms of the agricultural sector to respond. One thing that we realized, if you legislate things without considering the possible, without necessarily addressing the practices instituted or the current practices in such sectors, such as with the passage of the rice tariffication law, no? Yet we maintain the trading practices that were in place before the RCEP was instituted. Clearly, there has been a skewed situation with regards to our farm productivity. Originally, when we pushed for the RCEP, the idea was to increase productivity in the farms. It was never meant to make the prices lower. That's where the message get, what they call this, medyo na-blurred yung message doon. No? We were meant to generate income so that we can first fuel modernization, we can finance modernization and mechanization in our farms. That's critical to overall productivity. And secondly, the revenues would also have the inputs from the revenues, the tariff revenues would have helped the farmers compete with the importers to an extent. But given the realities and the trading practices that were still in place, yung mga millers natin biglang naging mga importers na lang eh. So we've seen that maybe a certain level of flexibility is required, especially in legislating this. So we are looking at, not necessarily, I don't know if it's the final form would end up suspending the RCEP or amending certain provisions of the RCEP law would be a welcome development in making sure that there's some flexibility among policymakers whenever there is, like for example, a supply shortage or there's a supply surplus, then government can act accordingly and not simply being limited to single course of action. So all those put together, will contribute significantly in the medium term towards increased productivity of farm products. It's always a supply thing. Now, there are two other aspects that we have to consider. Second is when the needs are immediate. Hindi naman natin pwede antayin kung kailan tayo nag-harvest ng bigas, doon lang gaganda ang buhay ng tao, no? So, I think this series of social amelioration programs can do so much. Sabi ko nga, ang presyo ng bilihin, hindi natin makokontrol lahat yon kasi especially when not producing it and we're just importing it, it would always be dependent on a number of external factors. But one way of addressing it would also be expanding and maximizing the capacity, the purchasing capacity of the people. And that's where social amelioration comes in. A lot of people would say, palaging band-aid solution ang social amelioration programs. Ito yung tinatawag nilang mga ayuda. But kung iisipin niyo po, in many regions in the country, like speaking for our region, Region 8, we actually maintained the high growth rate this year. Making it to top 6 fasting of the highest growth rate na regional economy, whereas previously before we used to be in the bottom 6. So our growth rate for 2023 was somewhere around 6.4%, which, if I'm not mistaken, that's significantly higher than the national average. And when we were reviewing it, we're telling ourselves, ano ba ang nag-increase? And we saw that it was services sector na nag-increase doon sa overall growth rate ng ating region, ng Region 8, ng Eastern Visayas. And that's when we came to know that it was really household consumption. And since tinatanong namin mga sarili namin, wala namang malaking mga factory na nagbukas, no? Although infrastructure spending has significantly impacted the overall growth rates in many regions, no? But still, we credit significantly the returns of social amelioration, itong mga ayuda programs. Maganda ang ayuda programs as a quick response strategy because they are targeted. And you look at significant populations that are most vulnerable, and if you make them less vulnerable, you have a built-in resilience system. Like for example, in the 4-piece program, when the interventions are supposed to encourage healthcare and education interventions in their children, that's definitely going to impact positively their growth later on. In areas like yung mga near poor naman, yung mga medyo kumikita, pero pag may nagkakasakit sa pamilya nila or nababagyo or minsan nasusunugan, no, at talagang bumabalik sa poverty, below poverty line, no, or kaya tinitingnan natin, maganda tong may programa tayong AKAP, yung ayuda sa mga kapos ang kita program, because it really targets the near poor. And it's good to help the near poor segments of the population, because kung titignan natin, sila yung mas mabilis makabawi. Mas mabilis silang they can easily go rebound, and most of this near poor, especially our AKAP beneficiaries, are actually breadwinners in their families. So you're not only helping that segment, you're also helping the segment that are dependent on them. Those belong to households where the breadwinners are actually almost there at the borderline ng poverty borderline. So that's where the social amelioration programs play a critical role. Of course, these are not long-term, but interventions. We cannot be giving a social amelioration over a extended period of time. But what we're saying is that its effects are going to be long-term. And productivity, the human resource productivity will go a long way in ensuring, as I mentioned earlier, a built-in resilience system for our economy. The third point that I think needs more attention is also our resilience with regards to disaster preparedness and disaster response, because the way we look at it, our experience not only in the last 2 years, but especially for us in Eastern Visayas, since Yolanda, many of these things are actually impacted by climate change, by the occurrence of these super disasters. So we cannot be creating policy per instance. We need an overarching policy that would really strengthen our defense against climate change and all these natural disasters. It's good that the country has been considered as the host for the climate change fund that the United Nations has put up, especially after the conference of parties in the COP in Dubai. So that's going to be a big thing. We have the global community finally realizing that they all have to invest in the disaster resilience of the smaller countries who are getting much of the impact of the unsustainable practices by the bigger countries. And that, I think, is a victory in itself. No? And hopefully the government and hopefully this administration will give you focus on that. Kasi hindi natin madi-deny yung overall. Sabi nga namin palagi sa Region 8, bigyan lang kami ng chance walang bagyo in 10 years. Siguro ang laki ng pwede naming maabot in terms of productivity. But unfortunately, typhoons are a staple in where I come from. So we really have to be prepared, and we really have to adapt. But of course, changing the practice, adapting all these structures, these practices would take some time and would require a significant amount of government interventions.
Susugan ko lang, Congressman Jude, the experience in your region, as well as the experience also in the BARM, because of the support, yung social amelioration, it resulted in a matter of a short period of time, 50% of the poverty reduction happened in the BARM. The experience was that there's an improvement in the household income, and these people now started to trade. They become productive, and so it resulted to community income. Kaya ang nangyari, ang bilis ng reduction in the poverty rates in the areas of Basilan, Sulu, and Lanao del Sur. And that is a proof to what you are mentioning. Parang may question din si Doc Chin.
I would just like to insert muna, meron kasing from our Facebook, there are comments. Insert ko lang to, Doc Adrian, according to Peer Ed, Com Jude, are there initiatives that's directed to the regions na yung micro economic plans?
Well, we just had the Philippine Development Plan, no, revised from 2023 onwards, and I think the region followed suit with the creation of the respective region development plans, and right now I don't know if I could speak for all regions, but in Region 8, for example, that has really been our guidebook, no, even in the identification of priority infrastructure programs. We've been holding infrastructure summits. Here I would say regional leadership can play a critical role, and we're fortunate that with a team of legislators coming from the region and working closely with our regional directors and the business community, we have made strides in making sure that we're on target with the goals that we have identified for ourselves in our regional development plan. There has been an uptick in infrastructure programs, and in fact, one of our challenges right now is making sure that we are able to implement all these projects on time, and the capacity has been quite of a challenge for us. So this in if you can notice, no, even with the fact that the president has been pushing for this bagong Pilipinas Serbisyo fairs in the different regions, has done a lot in increasing awareness about government interventions, not only even among the people, which that's very obvious, no, that itong bagong Pilipinas Serbisyo Fair, we bring all the government agencies, about 50 plus of them, delivering more than 200 services in a 2-day event in each of the provinces of the country. Hindi lang ang nakakaalam doon yung mga taong tumatanggap. You have members of Congress going with the speaker, going with the president, all this bagong Philippine Serbisyo Caravan. Alam mo, last sa stage, habang nanonood kami, minsan nakikita namin, DTI pala, nagpapautang pala ang Small Business Corporation. All these services, farm mechanization, all these government programs are brought to the spotlight. Now, it actually helps us decide with the prioritization of the national budget. When the budget proposals of the different departments are presented to us, now we are able to see for ourselves ito pala yung nakita namin dun sa isang bagong Philippine Serbisyo Caravan. So all these initiatives, both policy and actual practice, they all contributed to a growing awareness. Palaging sinasabi ni Presidente, we have to bring government closer to the people, and we've seen that in a concrete sense in the Bagong Pilipinas Serbisyo Fair. And I think I have reason to believe that it encapsulates the marching orders of the President to each of the departments, no. We much has yet to be achieved, no, but as I said, in 2 years we've shifted attention from a purely Manila centric perspective of development, a Manila centric perspective of policy development, to a more regionally inclusive course of action that we've seen in the last couple of months, in the last 2 years, that since the Marcos government took power.
Doc Adrian?
Yeah, Doc Chin. I think there's also another question. The President, this is the question from our live audience, Congressman Jude. The President has been trying hard to sell the Philippines as investment destination. However, why are several big foreign companies like Citibank are leaving the Philippines?
It's not a question only that they don't want to do business in the Philippines. Like, for example, Citibank left, but actually sold its stake to a local bank. I believe it's Union Bank, diba? For me, it can be a business. I'm not privy to why Citibank decided to leave, no. But the way I look at it is Citibank left as a business decision, but not necessarily giving up their business here. They just transfer it to a local player. So for me, it's even indicative of a growing confidence in our local players. I mean, you probably look at something as half full and half empty. I rather want to see it half full. So you're seeing multinationals looking at our other local counterparts as feasible partners for this, in the case of Citibank. And of course, there's always the geopolitical reality that's going around that cannot be avoided. That's part probably of the business decision making of many businesses. And also, I don't know how these businesses are in their home countries, right? Can't point all the fingers at us. So I don't think it's it diminishes the efforts of the president. It diminishes the impact of what has been doing, trying to sell investments, the country as an investment destination. But nonetheless, you've seen our economy being resilient despite all of this, and you've seen Filipino companies stepping up and filling up the void, or the opportunity, filling up the opportunity, stepping up to the opportunity left by these companies, and I have confidence now that this would even help strengthen the local capacities. I think the end of foreign investments is that they don't have to stay forever here. They're here to build our economy, and once we are able to build our own capacities, that I think signals that we're on the right track.
Correct. And also, before this escapes my mind, Congressman, you have mentioned about disaster resilience, and there is the growing opportunity on the carbon credit market, which is one thing that we could take advantage of. Are there legislative measures in relation to, taking advantage of it in the low carbon economy to that effect? Because that's a wonderful, good source, no? The big source of revenue, resource as well for our economy.
Well, there are some proposals. We have not yet discussed in details many of these proposals. I think the hesitation comes from a point that the whole context of carbon trading cannot be affected by a mere domestic legislation, especially that we will not be selling carbon credits to our own selves, but most likely we're going to sell it to international stakeholders and international players. As soon as probably, I think, if you ask me, habang hindi pa siya ganun ka-stable, I don't think it would be prudent for us to legislate on something that continues to shift its direction. But definitely, as you said, it's a welcome development. We should be looking at it closely and looking at how we can maximize what we have in the country. I've heard that there are many carbon trading initiatives and investments already right now in the country. But as I mentioned, domestic policy, domestic legislation can do only as much. And the more prudent way for me to go, because putting the cart before the horse would probably produce adverse effect, like derailing a growth of a potentially competitive industry as you've described it. But if we put the domestic legislation ahead until such time that the rules of carbon trading have matured globally, might result in the less desired situation. Parang kanyan, how do you eat an elephant? You cannot just simply swallow it all whole. Maybe if we try to consume it in parts, we'll be able to do something about it. I think that the preference of this government's approach towards climate change, its position with regards to climate change, its position towards preferred use of renewables, they all signal that we are that we are open, that we are encouraging of all this climate change, even carbon trading, no? And we just have to choose the right interventions. I think an executive intervention may be sufficient for the time being. And we look forward and we hope that the administration will, of course, as you mentioned, take a look into that.
That's
I have something to add pala kanina regarding disaster resilience. Are there any conversations in Congress to push for disaster risk financing or insurance to ease fiscal pressure from disaster response? So I have read some comments kasi doon kanina sa ng Facebook natin, but I'm just asking.
Alam mo, Doc Chin, we had that in place in the department, the omnibus bill, creating the Department of Disaster Resilience, no? If not the specific guidelines, the broad strokes are there. It's good to start discussing over that. But I think developing and firming up our overall disaster resilience framework, the institutional, how they say this, the institutional fit would be the priority before we can actually legislate insurance. Because I remember, I don't know if I hope I'm not mistaken, no. I understand part of the mandate of GSIS, for example, is to really ensure the insurance of our government facilities, our government buildings. But we have not really maximized that. Also because GSIS is busy with other concerns, more pressing concerns, no, with the pension system of our government workers. So that's what we've been saying, that maybe there are available mechanisms if we would zero in risk disaster risk insurance. There are government institutions that could play that role. But then again, accountability and making sure that those interventions are sustainable will all be dependent on making sure that we have a responsive and a dependable, a durable institutional fit for the government's framework on disaster resilience, so that there is really a dedicated agency who would be responsible in implementing that.
Yeah, I agree. You're on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. There's another question, a live question. A senior citizen, please tell us what this administration has done and will intend to do regarding the benefits for senior citizens as well as the persons with disabilities. Congressman.
In Congress, no, I can only speak for what is being done from Congress, which is, of course, in support of the administration. Is now we're looking at separate case rates for example, in terms of healthcare, reviewing the PhilHealth case rates for social citizens. I think Congressman Joey Soceda did a good presentation before we ended session last 2 months ago or a month ago, detailing the introduction of special case rates for the healthcare needs of senior citizens. That's really going to be important because senior citizens have a different set of healthcare needs, especially in their more senior years, and that's going to be an important thing to discuss, especially when our population profile moving in the way it is. Pangalawa, yung pinag-usapan namin sa Congress, yung universal pension for senior citizens. That would really help to a point the care of our senior citizens. No, malaking bagay ang universal pension kasi we will be able to address the needs of those who are indigents, those who have not prepared for their pension, lalo na sa Pilipinas, that everyone has a pension plan in place, no? That's really going to be very important na intervention. Well, we're also looking at other interventions, like making sure that we have opportunities for employment, more inclusive employment opportunities that cater to senior citizens. That's one. There are, for example, there are proposals now for more inclusive employment opportunities for persons with disabilities. So all of this, even and I'd like to mention no, the Congress, if you remember last year, did a series of oversight hearings on the implementation of the VAT exemption for senior citizens and PWDs, and much has been clarified already. And if you notice, many of the businesses concerned, no, have actually corrected their present practices, resulting in more discounts for our senior citizens and PWDs. That is a product of the synergy of the House and, of course, our executive agencies.
Yeah, that's a good indication of the care and compassion for the PWDs and the senior citizens, Congressman. Doc Chin?
Yeah. So I would like to bring our conversations to healthcare, Kong Jude. So besides what you have mentioned a while ago, are there significant policy changes or new initiatives in healthcare being pushed now?
Now, the president has started pushing for the regional centers, the regional kidney, the specialty centers, no, all over the country. So you have in many regions now, they are starting to build their own kidney center, their own heart centers, and I think those, we call them legacy projects in the healthcare of this administration. They will go a long way. In Eastern Visayas, for example, EVMC has now been made into a 1,500 bed hospital, and we're at the present building more than 23 specialty centers. We're even looking at doing our own kidney transplant early next year. So that's an indication. If that's coming from a region that has been considered one of the poorest, you can just imagine the opportunity also in other regions that there are relatively even better facilities before. You've seen the OFW hospitals in Clark. We're working on helping PGH achieve a greater level of institutional autonomy so we can have mini PGH all over the country. That's one thing. We have started constructing this year, the Philippine Cancer Center. That's not only going to focus on clinical treatment, on the clinical care for patients, but even for cancer research, the cancer registry, and all those interventions related to cancer care, which is still one of the highest mortality cases of mortality in the country. We have to the credit of the speaker who worked hard on this, for the first time, we have fully funded the cancer the cancer care fund under the as directed by the National Cancer Control Integrated Control and Cancer Control Act. So that's an important step in ensuring the care for our cancer patients and, of course, their dependents. Now, moving forward, where Congress has already indicated that we're going to review the charter of PhilHealth, we have the universal health care. There is a medical insurance function of PhilHealth, and in many cases, those two functions actually do not see each other eye to eye. Like, for example, we continue to increase our premium payments in the hope of subsidizing universal healthcare costs of the government, whereas you're subsidizing a population who is not even paying premiums and run counter to sound medical insurance practice. So we have to try to clear out what is really going to be the role of PhilHealth in this respect. No? Is it going to be a medical insurance arm for the government, or is it going to be a financial arm in the universal healthcare efforts? We thought of it, combining it in the previous years, but can see we have seen challenges along the way. We're also working with PhilHealth into looking into increasing their case rates and reviewing their case rates packages, and that's going to help a lot of our fellow Filipinos. And hopefully, no, starting this year, or at least it started to some extent last year, we started building more hospital infrastructures around the country. So it's a composite of many things: policy, financing, infrastructure, and hopefully even now research and innovation. We have filed in Congress, no, the yung party list has filed a bill on pharmaceutical innovation, strengthening the role of free clinical trials in the country, the process for accreditation, the process for initiating clinical trials as a way of opening up also the country to further medical innovation. Many of our pharmaceutical giants in the world are being fueled, driven by research now, and the Philippines has so much to offer in terms of expertise. I always tell our friends in the pharmaceutical industry, our foreign investors in the pharmaceutical industry, that it's no mere coincidence that the majority of foreign health workers all over the world are Filipinos. We have a caring DNA, so that makes us much competitive in terms of healthcare expertise. And if you add research to that, and I'm sure Dr. Chin and Dr. Adrian are familiar with the quality of our research human resource, that's going to go a long way in ensuring the innovation in healthcare. And that could contribute significantly to it can be a significant competitive advantage for us if we were able to really tune our policies, fine-tune our policies in terms of healthcare innovation. So all of this put together would hopefully make strides in making sure that healthcare is not only affordable but also accessible to our many Filipinos.
Those are really things that put us really na parang wow, dami ang direction din natin is really not only on the recovery, but I am already on the idea that we have recovered and already expanding, Congressman Jude. But one thing perhaps is dun sa posture natin on the infrastructure in relation to education, Congressman Jude, as well as yung physical natin na infrastructure on transportation and logistics. Are there any discussions on that?
Well, you've seen government spending on infrastructure has accelerated over the last 2 years. You can see the more intended and more intentful completion of the expansion of the railway projects that we have. And we are aggressively looking for sourcing for the Mindanao Rail Project and all of this. Right? All of these are not just banner programs. You have government actively seeking more, how would I describe it? More friendlier aid packages or investment opportunities. And the other thing is that is also what the Maharlika had in mind. We're looking at infrastructure that could be in the end feasible investment opportunities for the state that we could come in, so we can have better infrastructure not only being funded by GAA but actually being funded by the government, because especially in terms of infrastructure, we're not just looking at roads, bridges, although we have a good list of things that needs to be completed, but also talking even our own power grid that we need to look into, right? Especially now that the franchise of NGCP will come into review by Congress. So it's very important how we look at how all of this link towards building as you mentioned earlier, a more competitive environment for business to grow. I always say this: our ability to grow economically and fiscally would only be dependent on the amount of infrastructure that we have. It will always come to a point if we do not invest in in infrastructure, sorry. If we do not invest in infrastructure, no matter how noble our plans is for overall economic development, it would really come to standstill. So those two have to come together and And I think this administration is pretty aware of that. That's why there's no letting down on the amount of infrastructure that's being built all over the country.
All right. Doc Chin, salamat Congressman Jude.
Yeah, I would like to Kong Jude to pasana yung ask more questions, but our time is running out on us. Maybe there's a part 2 for this, Kong Jude.
I'll be happy to share because I'm also learning. I always say that whenever we get invited to programs like this, we also get to have a better pulse of what the people want to know or what the people need. We do not have a monopoly of ideas, and we're thankful to our friends in the media and of course our friends in the academy for somewhat bridging us and bringing our attention to areas where we have our blind spots, our blind sides. And when once those are brought into attention, you always make it a point that we try to reorient ourselves accordingly. Hindi naman porket congressman, hindi ka na pwedeng matuto eh. You have to do an even harder, take a harder effort at learning, and making sure that you're abreast with whatever is happening.
So thank you, Congressman Jude, and thank you to our viewers for joining us today. Any more Doc Adrian? Meron kang dagdag?
Parting shot of Congressman Jude. What can we expect, perhaps, now from your lens for tomorrow's big event?
Well, tomorrow is the State of the Nation. It's the third regular session of Congress, and we're looking forward to the President's speech. As members of Congress, it will be our marching orders on what are the next set of priorities that we need to legislate on, and we can assure the President and the administration of our dutiful support, especially for his initiatives for the country. But for the people, I would like to say two things. First is I would like to thank them for the kind attention and their involvement they're doing. Well, palagi kong sinasabi na pag nagkakaroon ng pagkakataong makapag-usap tayo tungkol sa mga ginagawa at nais natin gawin para sa bansa, pinapaalala nyo sa amin na yung ginagawa nating paglilingkod bayan ay napakahalaga. We cannot take it lightly. It reminds us that the job that we do, on it rests the future of our nation. And it's good to be reminded every now and then that so much is at stake, not only for our generation, but for generations to come. And secondly, I'd like to ask our people to be hopeful. We can all look at the less desirable realities in our country today, but so much has been happening and so much has been achieved in the last 2 years that if we only work together, we can all put our politics to the side and really give this government a chance. We're actually not giving just this government a chance. We're giving ourselves and our nation one big push for development. Maraming salamat po.
Salamat. Maraming salamat po, Congressman Jude. At kami po dito sa Mindanao nagpapasalamat sa support, of course, of the administration, lalo na sa infra spending. Tumaas po in a matter of 2 years, 123.8%. Yung infra spending dito, yung sa health is 13.5%. Ang laki po nun. And on education, 15% in a matter of 2 years. Kaya we are very happy and grateful for that. Kaya, Doc Chin?
Yeah. So once again, thank you, Congressman Jude, and to all our viewers. Thank you for joining us today. And as we look back in the past year's achievements, we are setting our sights on the future. Let us remain hopeful and united in our journey toward progress.
Kaya nga, stay tuned for detailed discussions, updates on the state of our nation tomorrow. Until next time, take care and stay safe always. God bless everyone. Thank you very much, Congressman June.
Okay.
Okay, daghan salamat po. Daghan po na